Welcome to episode 2 of the Physiology 225 podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jim Davis, and I'm thrilled to continue our journey into the fascinating world of physiology. In the last episode, we talked about homeostasis, which is the balancing act that keeps your body alive and thriving. Today, we're moving on to another core concept that's absolutely fundamental and one that we'll mention nearly every day of class. So grab a coffee or a hot chocolate, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. So what is flow-down gradients? Think of a gradient as a slope or a hill. When you roll a ball down a hill, it's moving because of a difference in height. That's the gradient at work. In physiology, gradients can take many forms: concentration, pressure, electrical charge, or even temperature differences. Flow-down gradients is all about movement, the transport of substances like ions, molecules, blood, or gases from one area to another. For example, when you take a breath, oxygen flows from your lungs into your bloodstream. Why? Because there's a higher concentration of oxygen in your lungs compared to your blood. The oxygen moves down the concentration gradient, following the natural tendency to go from more to less. Now, before we go any further, let's clarify some terms or key definitions. First, we have bulk flow. This refers to the movement of a solution like blood driven by a pressure gradient. Next, we have a concentration gradient. A concentration gradient is a difference in solute concentration between two areas. Next, we have diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of solutes from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Next, we have electrical potential. Electrical potential is a difference in charge between 2 points. Finally, we have resistance. Resistance is an opposition to flow, kind of like the friction on a slide that slows you down. Every organ system in your body utilizes gradients to function, from your nervous system using electrical gradients to your digestive system relying on concentration gradients for nutrient absorption. So ultimately, how do these gradients drive flow? Two primary factors determine flow: the size of the gradient and the amount of resistance. A larger gradient means greater flow. Imagine water rushing down a steep hill versus a gentle slope. But resistance complicates things. Factors like vessel diameter, temperature, viscosity, and the number of open channels can all increase or decrease resistance, which impacts the flow rate. So some examples of gradients include concentration gradient. For example, oxygen that diffuses into your bloodstream from your lungs. A pressure gradient, blood being pumped out of your heart throughout the rest of your body. An electrical gradient, sodium ions moving into a neuron during an action potential. An osmotic gradient, water moving into a cell due to a higher solute concentration inside of that cell. Now, these gradients work together in complex ways. For example, ion flow across the cell membrane is often influenced by both concentration and electrical gradients. If these gradients align in the same direction, flow increases. If they oppose each other, flow decreases. A perfect example is potassium, and we're going to talk about this later on in the semester. But potassium moves out of the cell. Its concentration gradient drives it out, but the electrical gradient works to pull it back in. Then we have the role of resistance. Resistance is the party pooper of flow. Let's say you're driving on the highway, and then suddenly there's road construction. Your speed, or flow, slows down. In physiology, resistance can come from things like narrow blood vessels or thicker fluids, both of which reduce flow. There are multiple factors that affect resistance, including the number of open channels. More open channels equals less resistance. Vessel diameter. Wider vessels allow for flow to occur more easily. Temperature and viscosity. High viscosity or low temperature increases resistance. You're probably asking yourself, why does this matter? Well, understanding flow-down gradients isn't just academic, it's critical for understanding how your body functions. Whether it's your heart pumping blood, neurons firing, or kidneys filtering waste, gradients drive these processes. And when gradients or resistance are disrupted, it can lead to diseases like hypertension, edema, or metabolic imbalances. So let's summarize with a few key takeaways. Flow-down gradients is the movement of substances driven by differences in concentration, whether they be pressure or electrical charges or concentration. Larger gradients and lower resistance lead to greater flow. Resistance is influenced by factors like vessel diameter and fluid viscosity, and resistance limits flow. Physiological processes often involve multiple interacting gradients, like a concentration and electrical gradients involving or affecting ion transport. And so that's all for this episode. As you continue your studies, keep an eye out for how gradients show up in everything from muscle contraction to nutrient transport. They're everywhere and they're essential. Thanks for tuning in to the Physiology 225 podcast. Until next time, where we'll talk about cell-to-cell communication, keep questioning, keep exploring, and stay curious.